The practice of surrogacy is not new, but there is growing concern over the trend of women engaging in this practice for money. The bill was written to the wishes of intended parents groups and not surrogate mothers. Although the bill did pass in the Senate, there was a 100% no vote from Senate Republican caucus.
There are a number of things. I have a number of questions. In fact, we could probably go on for most of the day with all sorts of questions, legalities. This bill opens up many cans of worms with many different difficulties and scenarios about what could happen, what under various situations. My bottom line on this is really that, members, sometimes some things are left better off if they're left unregulated. And in fact, actually, Senator Higgins mentioned that this is something that is entirely unregulated, but that's not true. There's many aspects of this that are regulated, different pieces. But again, I would say some things are just better off left unregulated. My first question to Senator Higgins is: you mentioned that this will help infertile parents have a child. And while that may be it's certainly a laudable goal, but the truth is that in this bill there's no requirement for that. So this is not something that is just for infertile parents. In fact, you can be completely fertile and go through this process, set up this contract, and have a baby through a surrogate mother. Is that true, Senator Higgins?
The intended parents have to have an affidavit from their physician saying that they have a medical need to have a surrogate or a gestational carrier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, a medical need, Senator Higgins, could that medical need be, could it be mental? Could it be emotional? Could there be other aspects that of a psychological nature that are not necessarily biological?
Gerlach, the bill already says that the intended parents as well as the gestational carrier both have to go through a mental, or all have to go through a mental evaluation to see whether they are appropriate people to go through this process.
There are people who take medication for mental health related issues.
I think that answers my question, that in this bill you don't have to be infertile. There's a broad definition of what medical, or what the reason is that a doctor could sign off on. There's another question that I have, Senator Higgins, and that is one that I posed to you on the telephone last week in our conversation, and you were going to look into it. And I'd like to pose it now to you so that the rest of the body can benefit from the answer. And that is, what happens about terminations of pregnancies? And I'm wondering, does anything in this bill prohibit the intended parents from forcing the carrier, the surrogate mother, from having an abortion for any reason? They're progressing along the pregnancy. The receiving parents can say, for whatever reason, let's just say gender selection. Well, we wanted a boy, not a girl, so we want to start over. We want to do over. Is there anything in this bill that would prohibit that would make a clause in a contract unenforceable, whereby the receiving parents could say, go have an abortion, we're going to do this over again? Is there anything that would prohibit that in this bill?
Senator Higgins.
Mr. Chair, Senator Gerlach, the woman, the gestational carrier, has control over her body. That's the right that all women have. But the intended parents cannot contractually either require or prevent an abortion. You cannot give that constitutional right under Roe v. Wade away.
Senator Gerlach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, then Senator Higgins, if the surrogate mother or the gestational carrier decides during the process that for whatever reason that she wants to terminate that pregnancy and have an abortion, the egg and the sperm are not hers. She's not the biological parents. If she has an abortion, is she committing murder on someone else's child?
As I said, Mr. Chair and Senator Gerlach, a woman has a right to choose to have an abortion. That's the law.
Senator Gerlach.
Mr. Chair, I'll yield to Senator Limmer.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Higgins and members, I think Senator Gerlach is making a very good point. In our law, we do have hypocritical stances on what we do and how we treat unborn children. If the mother intends on keeping the child and is attacked and the baby dies, that could be a murder charge. If the mother decides to abort the unborn child, that's a legal right in this country. Now, it's hypocritical, but that's the way the law is. Now, Senator Gerlach brings up the hypothetical situation that if the mother, the surrogate mother, carrying the child decides to exercise her Roe v. Wade rights to abort that child, it would be first a violation of the contract with the intended parents. So which law trumps the other? Is it Roe v. Wade, the right of the woman to control the destiny of her body and abort that child that she now claims is unwanted? Or do we recognize the rights, the contractual rights of the intended parent wanting that child? It's their child, they entered into contract, and now the surrogate mother is deciding to abort. What happens? What decision, does the contract trump Roe v. Wade in this case? Or does Roe v. Wade trump the contractual agreement between the intended parents and the carrying surrogate mother? I think it's an excellent question to ask, because someday in the future, if this is passed, this question will be going to the courts. I'd like to know, where are we going on this?
The reason that I'm going to be supporting this bill is because, from the standpoint of the best interest of children, they don't deserve to be placed in legal limbo where people are, where there's uncertainty, sometimes for years, about what might happen in terms of the long-term custody of that children. Those constituents are looking for us to give them certainty under the law in terms of how they're going to address these issues for things and practices that are already occurring.
My point is that these things that we're talking about are not in law today. We don't know whether a contract with someone to have a child for you is actionable or not in the case of a termination of the pregnancy. And I do appreciate your concern about the children. But we also know that there are many people who don't believe a child in the uterus is a child. And so does that entity, if it's a child, it has rights. If it isn't a child, it has no rights. It's a thing that can be contracted for and dispensed with as some other non-human thing might be contracted for. And so those are questions that this bill raises. And I think they are deserving of answers before we adopt the law that would put in place a structure that would anticipate or contemplate these kinds of things from occurring. So I think it's a fair debate to have so that we can understand exactly what we're agreeing to do here. And so I guess I still ask the same question. If I have a contract and the contract terminates the pregnancy, do I have an action under law to sue that person for having an abortion? And I think we should know that before we proceed with this bill.
We heard a bill called the Gestational Carrier Bill, which deals with being a surrogate mother. The bill just had a feeling to me like now in Minnesota you could hang out a shingle that says uterus for rent. It just seemed to make so light of the fact that this is a baby. Not just a thing. It's not just something to pass from one person to another. This is a live human being, and it's almost like we're just going to contract for carriers of a live human being. I was very uncomfortable with that, and there were some very strong unanswered questions about abortions as it relates to the contracts and things like that. So while the bill may have passed the Senate, I certainly hope that if it gets to the governor's desk, he'll veto the bill.
Thanks for watching Your Minnesota Senate in short.